My story begins with Andrew. Luckily, my mother and my grandmother, so my mother's mother, kept detailed diaries. And as you can see, my mother writes, "The clinic where we were being treated, and Roger had to tell me a terrible thing." And my grandmother writes, "It was 4 p.m. on that wintry afternoon. Mum, Roger's just told me that they're both going to die." Andrew was diagnosed with a rare, incurable immune disease, which Sue's so well pronounced. It's amazing. A chronic granulomatous disease. It affects the white blood cells and predisposes us to severe infections, bacterial and fungal. My parents were told that they would lose me too, as I had inherited the same condition, and in those days, almost all children died. There was something ethereal about Andrew, they tell me. There was a quality about him that was hard to describe. My mother, I think, once said that it was almost like he was too good for this world. You know, he was so passive, so calm. And the only hope for him, and it was an incredibly rarely performed and very risky procedure, known then as a bone marrow transplant, and as you've seen from the video before. In those days, it was barely really having much success, even with relatives, let alone with people who didn't have a match in their family. And Andrew had been put under the care of Professor John Hobbs, who had created the Westminster bone marrow team. Only a few people had been treated with this procedure. Andrew sadly died. It was just too late for him. A donor was amazingly found in Holland, but it was just literally hours too late. He was too sick. He'd become too much time had elapsed. Too much time taken to reach the diagnosis, to find out what was wrong. No donor in the family. It was just too late for him, unfortunately. My mother was determined that Andrew wouldn't die in vain. She was a very strong woman, and she was convinced that his death could mean hope for not only me, but for other children. So at 20 months, I was really pretty much nearing death myself. I'd already had 10 very severe respiratory infections, numerous septic lesions, huge glandular issues. The focus was on finding a bone marrow donor, but how would that be done? I had no match within the family, and in those days, there was nowhere to find an unrelated donor. You know, the whole Be a Match registry, donor registry, didn't exist then. There was no way of finding them. So my mother, being the force that she was, to be reckoned with, took matters into her own hands and started kind of writing articles for the local press, and it was picked up by the national media somehow, and they convinced her to, and the hospital, to run this campaign in the national media, and it became an absolute media sensation. And a miracle was needed, you know, a double miracle. We needed to find a donor, and then I needed to survive this completely experimental procedure. And such a double miracle would, of course, require miracle workers. My very own heroes in my very own story that need to be remembered. And first of these is, of course, my mother, Elizabeth. The next of these is, of course, my donor, who was found a few months later in the same town where my father was brought up. Thousands of people came forward, including Joan, and she, thank heavens, agreed to donate her marrow to me. This is another of the miracle workers, Prof. Hobbs. He and his co-professor, if you like, John Humble, they had been developing bone marrow transplantation and working on the idea of it since the 50s, rather than say he's over here on this side. Few others were prepared to really take the risk, and in this country they just weren't prepared to kind of go ahead and try these things out. But luckily for me, in the UK, Prof. Hobbs decided that there was no other option anyway. There was nothing to lose. It was, I would either die or we could try this, and that's, he we all decided that there was no choice. And so on Friday the 13th of April 1973, I had my transplant. Friday the 13th is obviously quite lucky for some people. And against all the odds, the graft took and my body started producing excuse me, healthy white blood cells. This is the first time this had ever happened. The impossible became possible. My earliest memories are from this time. As you can see, there I am, kind of like, demanding to be picked up. I wasn't very keen on this whole business of, masks and, the gowns, and I couldn't see, my parents' faces, only their eyes. The facilities were appalling in those days. The sterile conditions that were needed now in very technologically advanced environments weren't available. And so they just turned the normal, old Victorian hospital room into a sterile environment. And my mother was absolutely determined that this would be done properly. But it wasn't being done properly in her view. And the night before my transplant, she marched into the doctor's office, asked for the consent form that she had signed previously that day, and ripped it up. And this is like in view, the whole media, the whole country was waiting with bated breath to see what would happen. And the next day when I had this transplant, she wasn't afraid to kind of make sure that the right conditions were in place. She also did lots of awareness kind of raising and raised lots of money. There I am with my dog. It was a very experimental procedure. It did work, and it gave me 6 years of normal life with no infections and normal growth, even though it's hard to actually imagine that that's true, but apparently it is true. But unfortunately, when I was 7, they kind of knew already that they hadn't grafted enough, and the one thing they did learn from my procedure is that you need to completely eradicate the immune system, the one that you are working with. Otherwise, a new graft won't take, or won't take fully. So it wasn't a lifelong success in that sense, and that didn't come until years later here in this country. However, I was living proof that it could be done, that a donor, an unrelated donor's marrow could be transplanted successfully in, that your body would start producing white blood cells, new ones, in fact new cells altogether. And it also proved that volunteers actually were willing to help, and this just wasn't known. And this was really something that was a surprise to everybody, that so many people came forward and were willing to help and donate their own bone marrow, their own stem cells. At the time, they discovered that fundamentally my transplant had failed. My mother died. This is not a good time for her to die. I'd just become sick again, and she fought so hard. But her time with us was cut short. I had to face the rest of my life without her. Yet without her force, her passion, her staunch belief in God that kept her going and gave her hope, I probably wouldn't have survived. And I think at this point it's important to realise the burden of this kind of what we go through on our caregivers, not only on ourselves, but on our caregivers. These times of trauma are very taxing, not only physically but psychologically, and our emotional welfare is almost as important as our physical welfare. The two are intrinsically linked, and that's another talk for another day, but that's something I'm very passionate about. We need to take the time and space to heal the emotional wounds, and be okay with them and accept them, and move on, with awareness and with love. So what came next for me, you may well ask? Why didn't I have another transplant? Well, it was offered. It was offered when I was 18, but by then I was having years and years of kind of relatively untroubled life. I had no serious infections. I did have a lot of serious infections growing up, from the age of 7 to the age of 13. Liver abscesses, lung, I can't tell you the number of times I've had pneumonia. I mean, it's just like, pneumonia? No problem. And by that stage, of course, antibiotic treatment was so much better. General treatments were so much better. And I'm pretty high maintenance now on our British NHS, but nonetheless, I'm still here. living with this chronic illness that I have, this life-limiting condition, but I'm still here. One with hope and with the right kind of strength and support can get through anything. And I travelled the world. I was determined that I would travel. I had a career in the travel industry, and the next few slides were me kind of like doing all sorts of wild things. My doctors were like, "What? Seriously? You're going to Africa?" Oh, God. Gorillas in Uganda, voodoo festival in Togo, dog sledding in Sweden, you might know after. So I decided that relatively early on in my life that life was political, I was going to do what I wanted to do. And I wasn't going to be held back from doing so just by some pesky condition. And now I hope to keep putting the word out there for new donors to come forward and talking about living life to the full, in spite of really quite difficult challenges that not only me but many of us face. I'd like also to finally dedicate this presentation and highlight the fact that many, including my brother of course, many people didn't survive and haven't survived. And the success that we all experience today is also because of it. And I'd like to kind of dedicate this to them.